All right. Have you had a good day? It's been a good conference. Nice. Learn things new. Woo! Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Yeah, keep the energy really high late in the day. Nice. I actually just had a cup of coffee, so I'm gonna try to do that. Nice. So we have a panel that is has a really wide sort of range of experiences and of expertise. And what we're trying to do here is really just sort of wrap things up and talk about what are interesting directions to go at this intersection, right, of Web3 and sustainability. What are we going to do next? What do we want people to focus on? But I want to start by grounding that in, what each of you do, right? And is there something that you learned from the conference today that really sort of stuck with you that you didn't know before, or some comment you heard that sort of changed your perspective on something? So God, can you go first and introduce yourself and say something that you learned at the conference?
Thank you, Alan. My name is Gajanana Hegde. I'm from UN Climate Change. I've been working with carbon markets more than 15 years and started with Clean Development Mechanism. More recently, I've been also involved with developing the rules and modalities for the Article 6 carbon markets, supporting the supervisory body of the Article 6. I'm also involved with the negotiations on carbon markets, but also on climate finance. The other role I play is to work with a lot of MDBs, multilateral development banks, to harmonize their GHG accounting practices. One of the most recent activity where I got involved was also UN Secretary General has set up a council of engineers with world-class engineers, about 50 members, and we were helping them to get started with their work. So they're also looking into technology options for solving the climate change. So these are some of the set of the things I've been working, but I should say I learned a lot over the last 2 days. And should I go into my learning specific?
Yeah, what's the thing that's maybe not every, at least one thing.
Yeah, I was stuck with this the hackathon on cook stoves, especially. I've been working on that methodology for more than 15 years from the very beginning. And it's a very, very complex methodology. I mean, although it looks, the cook stove itself is a simple one, but the overall carbon transaction is one of the most complex and also very complex to make it also very reliable in terms of results. But some students taking it up and then coming up with a solution in just 2-3 weeks is makes me very optimistic, and then the power of the technology brings me much more hope. That's one of the things. Of course, the Jason's tool was also makes me much more optimistic than what I was before. So those two things stand out for me.
And I think a huge shout out right to the Hedera team for really pushing a lot of that methodology development forward and taking something that you worked on for 15 years, right, and giving it sort of new life in a interoperable Web3 standard, which is really cool to see these sorts of things come to light. John?
Yes, hello. Hi, everyone. My name is John. I am one of the co-founders of Toucan Protocol. At Toucan, we are working with technology to help unlock climate action at scale. So for the past 2 years, we've been focused on building digital tools that help get resources to impact creators more efficiently. And my background is a bit meandering, but I've been working in the impact space for many years now. Most relevant was I've got a background in spatial data science and visualization. And while I was studying that in a master's course, I was also going really deep on blockchains and smart contracts and the decentralized web, looking at how those two worlds fit together. Honestly, didn't really anticipate at the time that it would link up with environmental assets. I was a bit more interested in supply chain management and international governance, but made my way into the environmental assets space, and here we are on the stage at Sustainable Blockchain Summit. As far as things that stood out to me, it's really interesting to observe how the conversation shifts as the kind of broader market environment shifts. Definitely feels like we're pretty deep into quite a significant down market, both with the carbon markets and with the crypto markets, and just seeing little signals that kind of point to that. But I hope this is a really healthy thing, right? That this kind of creates the conditions where we need to really look inwards, do a bit of belt tightening, and look really closely at some of the assumptions that we made in other market environments, and kind of reassess those. So some comments that stood out this morning. Ned from Digital Gaia was talking about the importance of addressing the real economy, and I think that's really powerful, right? We can talk about it a bit later, but I think we have a tendency within crypto to kind of think about how, oh, we want to build an alternative financial system, burn it down, forget about it. And I think there's a kind of underappreciated ideal of refi, which is pragmatism and an impact orientation. And that means sometimes recognizing that ideals have trade-offs, and if we bring pragmatism as an ideal in, we need to maybe relax our maximal decentralization or this kind of thing. I also really appreciated Sam's comments on the importance of storytelling. I think we can kind of trip over our own brains sometimes. Maybe not me, but people in the room are sometimes too smart for their own good. That's not to say that storytelling doesn't require intelligence. I think actually the opposite, that the smartest people are able to take very complex ideas and convey them in a way that makes sense. And then this last talk that I saw with Jason, the En-ROADS talk, afterwards, I was really struck by him kind of saying, look, we don't make recommendations. This is a very complex set of trade-offs that we face, that we need to have a conversation and a discourse as a society about what we value. There's not a kind of like mathematically optimal path. This is a moral conversation as well as it is an economic conversation and a political conversation and a technological conversation.
Lots to dig into there. Awesome. Simge.
Thank you. Very, very nice being here today. I'm Simge, one of the co-founders at Gainforest, where we are focusing on transparency as a service solutions for different regeneration projects. And and my responsibility in there is really focusing on our strategy and the milestones that we are setting for our little project here. And coming back to today and what I've been experiencing here, being at SBS Boston, is really the power of this event and the intersection that it is providing overall, bringing in the blockchain and the sustainability, not only from a perspective of conservation and protecting natural assets, but also looping in the aspect of clean energy and the energy transition that's going on there. And I think that's been very successful. And I feel this energy here in this room, that together, knowing, like with this vast amount of knowledge and the willingness to cooperate, we are at a very, very good place to change something. And we are doing this and seeing this, experiencing this, hearing all your stories. It's always just the best reminder to know that we are on the right path.
Angelo.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Angelo Kalaw. I work for the Celo Foundation. Celo is an ecosystem that believes that we can use the technology to enable conditions for shared prosperity. This mission alignment has been our ethos from day one. At the foundation, I had an initiative called the Social Impact Collective. Our goal is to catalyze the use of Web3 and blockchain technologies to solve the world's most intractable problems, believing that Web3, of course, is a powerful mass coordination tool. So since day one, we've been on the field, like exploring use cases such as humanitarian aid, linking workers to participate more meaningfully in the digital economy, financial inclusion products, access to under-collateralized credit. And what brings us here, of course, is like one of those intractable problems is the climate crisis. And so like Celo wants to be like the home of refi. And what excites us the most is like how the technology can enable like opportunities for community and individual participation and empowerment. And so this is one thing that I'm also personally very excited about in the space. The conversation today, I think, just makes you a little bit more hopeful, right? Like we're in the down market. The bad actors are being weeded out. But I think one of the favorite taglines or quotes I heard today is like show, not shill. And I think today is like a powerful reminder that at least like the refi space walks the talk on that. Like we're really proving out the real world utility of this technology. It's not just for speculation. It can really contribute to like opening new avenues for participation and change to address the crisis. And very excited about that. There was a talk today by Nirvan on like many ways by which the communities are being engaged in climate action. Not just like AI and technologies replacing humans, but actually empowering them and like giving them, tools to not only meaningfully contribute to climate action, but also like them, having new tools towards their prosperity. And I see that we're marching towards the right direction.
100%. And I hope that sense of hope is something that we can really cultivate. And I think it was Gloria who, on the land panel, who brought that in, show not shell, right? Which I think is really important. I'll add one, which is related to the show not shell concept, right? Which is one of the things that really stuck out with me from today, was that working through the En-ROADS demo and this really sort of comprehensive model of all of these different ways we can tackle the climate crisis globally, that there really was no one silver bullet, right? There's no one thing that if you do it, it solves the climate crisis. It really does take people working together across all the different fields and industries and sectors of the world, right? Across for-profit sector, across NGOs and government sectors, to solve these problems that are huge, right? And sort of on that note, I wanted to ask about the global stocktake, Gaj. And I was wondering if you could first tell us what the global stocktake is, because I think this is something that people might not be super deeply familiar with, and just talk about like what is the role of public and publicly verifiable data in what you do.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very important question, also very timely question. If we look at current architecture of the global response to the climate issue, it's primarily the global community experimented with 3 different experiments. The very initial days, they started in the 90s with UNFCCC, which was very, intention was there, but science at that time was also not very clear. But later on, when science became more clear, there was some attempt by a select number of countries under Kyoto Protocol. It was a legally binding emission reduction target, which some countries took, 32 countries in that instance. And then they created an instrument called Clean Development Mechanism, where projects could be done in another country, particularly developing country, and then one could import the benefits of that for a cost-effective emission reduction in this 32 countries. That was the model of Kyoto Protocol. It was, at the time, it was revolutionary, and it did have considerable impact. In fact, clean development mechanism projects, they channeled something like 300 billion into clean projects. At some point there were 3,000 consultants around the world. So it helped a lot of capacity building, but it was not simply sufficient. And meanwhile, the scientific evidence also grew. And the most recent one is the IPCC AR6 report, which is a compilation of 30,000 papers written in the past few years. And what they are saying is, it was already shown in the slide, 1.5, 1.1 degrees have already increased compared to the past century, and the impacts could be quite severe. But like now, it's not sufficient to, in that instance, to only some countries take actions, but others are not. So the architecture got changed with the advent of Paris Agreement, given that new science has come. So every country has to do something, and but also the countries are not equally responsible for the problem and not equally capable to address, take actions. So that
at some point it'll actually fall, and then hopefully we're off to the races. But I think in the meantime, what we want to do is line it up so that we've got really clear reasons why these credits on the blockchain are much better than credits that are not on the blockchain. So again, I'll pass it to Simge to talk a little bit about DMRV and transparency and accountability.
Thank you, John. So actually, coming back also to the question here, there is a big topic around supply and demand, I think, overall, and triggering the quality of the supply and like offering better solutions out there is a big contribution to also at the same time influence the demand on this side. So this is also the work that we are focusing on at Gainforest, where we are like improving the supply in a sense of giving more transparency, and not only more, but real transparency on the projects that are on site. And by this also creating, of course, more demand for these kind of transparent projects that are going to change the narrative of restoration and conservation in general. And at the same time, and I think this is very, very important to focus on, especially being part of this community, is the communities themselves. So Web3 is also something they need to embrace. They need to understand. They need to feel confident and like embrace to use it and take all the advantages of it that this technology is offering. And I think this is also the part where we come in and play a very crucial role in empowering them and teaching them how to use this technology, in offering different solutions for like having access to it, but also then later on off-ramping the payments they might get through this, and solving all this complex challenge to improve the quality of the demand. To improve the quality of the supply, but then at the same time also improve the quality of the demand on both sides, the demand to provide this supply and also the demand to take advantage of this supply is something very, very crucial. And I think overall with Gainforest, we are just very happy to have very good partners here, Filecoin being one of them, but also the Sandal Foundation and Climate Collective. We've been running excellent pilot projects where we've been testing or measure to earn technology that is focusing exactly on this topic of empowering these marginalized communities through the Web3 technology and providing them but with a new source of income, and really getting rid of this prisoner's dilemma of either keeping the land and paying taxes for it or selling it off to a farm or any other agriculture project. And by solving this problem, I think we can also contribute and create much better products that are then making the solutions more attractive. And yeah.
Can I ask sort of on that note, right? A crypto skeptic would say, okay, so you should work with the communities who are actually, on the front lines of the climate crisis. Like you worked with communities in the Philippines that I think you were alluding to. And they would say, okay, you should pay them directly and you should let them collect data, and we can have them collect data and put it in a database without Web3, right? And we could pay them without Web3 tools. Like, why is Web3 the secret sauce that makes this work in a better way?
It makes them the owner of the data. And I think that's something that's very, very important for them to understand and take this ownership.
I'll actually build on what Simge is saying. I had the privilege to work with Gainforest a lot. And just to your question, Alan, just like stepping back, I think there's a lot to be done in terms of like linking to the current carbon markets now. But I think as an industry and as a community, we can do a better job of telling the story of like why Web3. And right now, maybe most people see it as just like the alternative tech stack for carbon markets, right? But I think what we're bullish about is the possibilities, the combinations that can happen. Just like what Simge was saying, onboarding communities, giving them Web3 tools to participate, they become owners of the data. But also think about the things that it can unleash, right? Like suddenly these communities that are in far-flung areas who have just the, are very traditional, having access to financial products and services through DeFi. And that's because we've onboarded them through Web3 wallets, right? And suddenly these are unbanked, underbanked populations finally creating credit histories from themselves, which would hopefully like unlock credit for them to set up their own businesses. So I think that empowerment piece is something that we can elaborate more for people to understand that this is not just like, we're going to make carbon markets efficient. At the same time, I think the promise of Web3 is also, as we've said, opening new ways of participation, such that these carbon markets are not just limited to institutions that can generate or like would set standards that would, let them basically lead to the inefficiencies right now where only big institutions can take profit, right? What I'm referring to is like now, because of the technology, because of Web3, because of blockchain, we can now imagine a world where individuals can track like, oh, I took a bike instead of like a car. Maybe there's a carbon credit to that. Maybe there's a market to that. Maybe I can exchange that and use that somewhere. And these are things that you cannot imagine in the current carbon market now. But I think we have to tell that story better. And of course, as builders, as ecosystem, supporters, we need to accelerate that innovation and like see that, show that it's really the secret sauce.
Totally. Can I ask a really specific question about how you're approaching this in a lot of these communities, which is about off-ramps, which has come up a bunch of different times, sort of in passing today. And you mentioned community currencies also. Celo has built amazing infrastructure for allowing anyone with a smartphone, or I think you said a feature phone too, to accept payments and make payments on the Celo blockchain. But if you go to a community where they predominantly use paper currency, it's hard to get that started, right? They want to be able to, take the phone to an ATM, and like there aren't Celo ATMs in communities that use paper currency, right? So how do you get that started? How do you like bootstrap this new sort of monetary system in that situation?
Right. I think the first one really is trust building. Gainforest did a really good job here, which is like choosing a good community partner who will vouch for you, who will go with you on the ground, because like, I mean, I was a Filipino as well in the Filipino community, but essentially I'm a stranger. But then like having a community partner presenting the technology to them is always the first start, right? Like we're not out here to scam you or to get you. And I think to any technology experiment, that's crucial. But second one, I would say at least even across the different pilots that we've done, not just like refi focused, what's the recurring themes are, one, the product should work. When you say it's a wallet that will transfer value in a matter of seconds, when they point their phone on the QR code in another wallet, in a matter of seconds, it should be transferred. And that builds trust and that builds confidence, like, oh, this is true, they're really not scamming me. Or this is not like some random coin that we're doing. But the off-ramp question is a very fair question. I would be transparent to say that, of course, like in different jurisdictions, it depends. Regulation is also becoming tricky. But right now, our approach here is one, of course, like pursuing more partners, having like proactive conversations with regulators on like how to connect well with fiat. Because again, that connection to fiat is the second ingredient. It's a recurring theme. We think of cryptocurrency and blockchain to be like disruptive to financial institutions. But in fact, the path to adoption is to make sure that we have good connection to the fiat economy and to the fiat world. So there's proactive development there. And then at the same time, just creativity, right? Like showing to them that, oh, one, if you want to convert it to fiat, there will be options. But also, again, the possibilities within Web3, you don't need to always convert to fiat. We've seen anecdotal evidence where communities started using the crypto that you receive to exchange among each other, such that it's only the shop that will convert it to fiat and everyone else will just transact the currency. So again, I think this is where it gets exciting. Money being programmable, money essentially being a trust instrument. And so like the off-ramp is like there as like a tactical problem, but also like there's that future where, okay, convincing them to stay within the ecosystem and them seeing the value of like staying in that ecosystem is also like full of potential.
Right. No, that absolutely makes sense. That at least to some extent, as long as the off-ramp works, no one needs to use it, right? People, as long as they're confident that it's going to work when they need it, they're not going to actually have to use it. But you need to build that confidence.
Just like a bank, right? Yeah. Like as long as you have a trust in the bank that anytime that you go there, you'll withdraw, that you can withdraw, then you're okay. You're not going to pull out. But then like
people always trust.
But just like, like
that's all problem.
Yeah. But like any rumor that like, oh, this bank is going south, you're gone.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're trying to highlight, what next, right? Some of the interesting areas to work in. Maybe off ramps in situations like this are one of those areas. Gaj, I was wondering if you started to say something a bit. Do you have more thoughts on adoption of crypto in this space, or of carbon offsets or other solutions, or also just from your vantage point of seeing many other technologies get adopted or not over time, what advice do you have for us?
Yeah, indeed. I think probably it will not be like explicitly crypto would be used, but increasingly there is demand for more reliability, both in compliance and voluntary market. And as was already mentioned, it was supply-demand issue, but also it was an issue of carrot and sticks. And in the past, even the suppliers could do away with lighter MRV, and then the requirements were also light because it was a market which was just starting, but it has matured in a big way now. And the carbon price on an average basis was just $3 on a global basis, but in to make a real impact, it should be $75 according to IMF. But we saw that with 150 it can solve a lot of issues. But once this higher price becomes available, you can also do many things with technology. So there will be in future, the design of the Paris Agreement means that indeed for carbon markets, a lot of requirements have come in. They'll have to show that it is compliant with the Paris temperature goals, and then the MRV is much more robust compared to the past market mechanisms. So to comply with that, it will be imperative for any project to adopt technology. It may not be 100% DMRV technology in the beginning, but at least some parts will already, we see that it's already, the people are already going into technology for collecting data, all that. So going forward, I think there will be more and more technology adoption. And one thing what we have seen is these markets like repeatability. Once a few people have done and then it has been accepted by the regulators, many more would like to go in that route. So because the most market participants are risk averse and they would like to go with something which has been accepted. So here regulators are expected to play a bigger role, and indeed they will play, because this temperature goals of Paris Agreement, it's a fundamental requirement for them to also be responsible for, and there will be more demand for MRV. So all of that will trigger more action, and then very little time is left now, and that's why these technologies, all of your work will have a very important application, because we have seen that number of countries which want to apply to use carbon markets has doubled in the last in the last NDC cycle. Over the last 2-3 years, nearly 60-70 countries want to use it, and then all of them need some assistance to deal with all these complexities, and the only way that can be done is to use some of this technology. So I'm very optimistic, but there is also a need to do some capacity building, do some demonstration, and show to the regulator that this is how it works.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting take, right? It's a complex space where there have been many technologies that fought really hard to get adopted before Web3 came in. And that's a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, we're competing with technologies that are more mature. On the other hand, there are these existing frameworks for funding them that once we can get adoption or acceptance within, they can potentially scale very quickly. So I think it's a great sort of set of thoughts to hold. I was wondering, one of the things that stands out about many of these solutions is that they're very interchain. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how, you are, like in the Game Forest example, right? You're working with Celo and Solana and Filecoin, Toucans, bridging between all these different chains, right? Celo clearly has relationships with a ton of different chains and ecosystems, right? What do you have any thoughts about sort of why the future needs to be interchain and really what that means sort of in this area specifically?
Yeah. I mean, there are many, many advantages that come with interchain, and one can also argue that there are many disadvantages that are coming with it. And our focus is, of course, on the advantages here. I like to see it in a way, that we can take the best of all the different chains that are out there and give back this advantage to the communities that we are working with. And this is actually one of the key reasons why we've been doing what we are doing in this way, to also give the transparency layer in the different functionalities that we are doing. So the smart contracts that we are running, but also the dynamic NF trees that we have. So we basically calibrate our solutions and transparency features to the different functionalities of the chains. And what we like really about working together with Cello and the Cello Foundation is their great network in off-ramping. And this is like an advantage that no other chain can offer to us. And we think they are the masters in it. This is the right way moving forward. And this is so crucial to increasing the adaptation of the technology. So we wouldn't want to pay the price of risking that the technology is not being adapted by not going the extra mile in providing this inter-chain network that we have out there. And of course, also with Filecoin, I mean, I showed a picture earlier of an immutable data point that we have. So the immutability is very, very crucial to what we are doing, because that will ultimately give full transparency and eventually also, with science moving forward, the possibility to really backward improve what we've been doing.
I can make a couple comments. Maybe I'll just start by saying that I'm pretty confused, and the further I go into this, the more confused I get. Because, we've got so many different converging, unbelievably complex things happening here. We've got the global political landscape and the immense complexity of the Paris Agreement, and all of these national, regional, kind of intergovernmental carbon pricing, core carbon borders. I mean, it's just kind of, that in and of itself is overwhelming. And then we're talking about the complexity of the global economy, and now we're also bringing, kind of crashing into this whole thing, the complexity of crypto and Web3. So I like to try to break things down in an understandable way, and usually it means I have to wade through this period of like despair and complete confusion, which is kind of where I feel like I am.
But it's verifiable, right? So it must be
totally
straightforward.
I'm verifiably confused, that's for sure. But I guess, like, to me, the vision of where we're going, the metaphor I could think of is like a national rail network, right? Like, different companies build different sections of the rail network, but if they do it in a way that it's compatible, then the freight can seamlessly flow around the country, and it doesn't matter that this one was built by this company and this one was built by that company. This is on Cello, that's on Regen Network. The vision that I think we should be working towards, at least, and this is specifically, I'm pretty biased in that I think about this from the perspective of the voluntary carbon market. But I really like the vision of a Paris or Article 6 compliant global carbon registry. And that's where credits flow to where they're needed most, and there's proper accounting of how those credits are applied to the nationally determined contributions. And then the guts of that is kind of up to us to sort out, but from the outside observer, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if this is retired on Regen or on, wherever or whatever, as long as we have kind of a coherent outside face that presents this in as simplified a way as we can. That is where I hope to kind of make sense out of this confusion and form a degree of elegance from all of this complexity. But I think we have a long way to go. I also think we are making progress. In the last month, we've built bridges to Cello, and we've built bridges to Regen Network. So we've already started binding up these different technological infrastructure components with the ability for credits to flow to where different builders are working on different products in each of these respective ecosystems. That's kind of a big step towards that vision I'm saying of seamless, cool, the credit's going where it needs to go, and being applied where it needs to be applied, being accounted for properly. That's my 6-year-old brain kind of, okay, this is starting to make sense now.
Making sense of confusion. We have like 8 more seconds. I know, Angelo, you had thoughts on interchain solutions. I wanted to ask one rapid fire question and go down the line. But first, Angelo.
Yeah, I can go really quickly, but I personally, as like working in the Web3 space, is very much supportive of a cross-chain future, and that's because of 2 things. One is, as my colleague Isha said in her panel this morning, I hope next year we don't have to explain refi anymore, right? And for or like refi is like, you know, a concept that's easy to grasp. And for us to do that, we need everyone's help, right? And secondly, I think you know, projects really just find different advantages from each of the chain. Like I think Gainforest is a really good example for that. Like some chains are better at like financial liquidity. Some chains are just better at like technology in terms of smart contracts. Some chains like Kalaw is better at like the last mile solutions. And like we shouldn't stop projects from, you know, realizing that value, because at the end of the day also, like as an industry, we have to work on our reputation. And if the chains cannot talk to each other, if we cannot like model cooperation, like just what we're disrupting essentially at the end of the day to solve the climate crisis, I don't think we will get that confidence from, you know, the broader, you know, other stakeholders that really this solution has, or like this technology can provide a new solution that current solutions cannot provide. So yeah, we're very supportive of that, and we do support projects like Toucan as well as like Gainforest to make that happen. But of course, part of that also is like the technical challenges, right? Like efficient bridges, again, chains talking to each other, and not like, and also again, decentralization and transparency, like making those codes, you know, composable as well as like easy to access for builders.
100%. To end, we're over time. To end on a note of what's next, just a really rapid fire question in one sentence. What is something that no one is building as far as you know that you want to be built? For me, I want a mat-based tool built that allows landowners to bid to have transmission infrastructure built across their land and get a dynamic where they're building more.
I will still look wearing my micro hat. I would say that the focus would be countries now, and from the country perspective, they are looking at climate finance, carbon markets, and also in future carbon border adjustment. So some tools will be required to handle all the 3 together. That's my wish list, and listening to all of you, I get a sense that you will build it one day. Thank you very much.
I'm going to zig when everybody's zagging, but I'll say I want to see something built it's not that no one's building it, but I just want to double down on it. I think storytelling skills, and I think we need to build storytelling skills because we're ambassadors and we need to be building relationships and reputation. We don't have the luxury of kind of trying to build this parallel system in ignorance of the rest of the world. This is kind of back to that initial point of the value of pragmatism and an orientation towards impact now.
Well, we are crazy about biodiversity. So something that I see out there, I'm missing out there, is a much more stronger focus on interspecies finance. And I think that's something that would be amazing to see also in the Web3 place.
My wish list would be like perhaps a 3-minute video of like what blockchain and Web3 is. That will be very easy to understand and will explain technology to your grandparent.
Someone's typing that into GPT-4 right now. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That concludes SBS Often.